Hello and welcome to another episode of A Course in Miracles Help. So today we're going to do workbook lesson number 13. And it's a slight variation on the one before, but an important one. So a meaningless world engenders fear. Remember what we were talking about this one last time, this quote from Edward Albert. So fear is the only true enemy born of ignorance and the parent of anger and hate. So last time we said, I am angry for that because I see a meaningless world, and we're just going one step backwards. Like into the what is the cause of that anger. So, like we were saying the other day, getting back to this is that it's all from fear. Fear is like the root cause of all these things, and they all have these different clothes and seem like they're kind of different, but it really is just all fear. If you really cross-examine everything that you believe, that especially the negative things. So, if we think of a meaningless world engenders fear, the way to uh, perceive this is on this line, especially. So, this line that follows back, and especially as it goes back to mind, is when it's projecting and when it's creating this scenario that it sees here. It knows that there's a part of it at least that knows that it's not true, and then it represents a will different than what was above. If we go back to the beginning, so the will that it's presenting looks like a divided will, or it looks like it's a new created will, one in opposition to the one that was before, with a new master, if you will, which would be this mind. And we'll learn in the book that that isn't true. This world is without an effect, is without any real effect. So what has no real effect doesn't influence what happens in the real will, I guess you could say. So it's kind of a misperception, but it believes it. So when it does this, it feels like it's made kind of a powerful enemy up here, in that it's doing the opposite of what it thinks it should be doing. So this is kind of that overall concept of fear of God. If you maybe heard that before. So this is why it engenders fear, and this is why fear becomes all these other things like anger and hate. So the ignorance, if you will, is right here. It knows, but it's willfully not accepting why it's there and just kind of ignoring it, as it probably thinks that it's just inevitable that it's, if there's a will here presenting itself, that it's going to be in contrary to the one up here. Something this kind of reminds me of, and this is interesting because you can look at a lot of literature and see a lot of the same themes, and there's certain stories that resonate with everybody. And I think we're looking at here image of Robin Hood. And the story of Robin Hood has sort of universal appeal. And there's been lots of other ones similar to it. If we look at the premise of it, there's somebody helping a situation, but I don't really want us to focus on this person as much as I want to focus on the Sheriff of Nottingham. Because the sheriff is, in most of the renditions of it, I know not everyone has him as the main person that's running contrary to Robin, but if we take some of the different translations, the Sheriff of Nottingham is taking over a kingdom while the king is gone, and he wants to rule the kingdom, and he does a lot of things to try to solidify his position, even knowing that, I mean, there's a lot of people that say a lot of different things about which king this is supposed to be representing. This is an actual historical entity, and Richard the Lionheart is kind of sort of the consensus, or one that's most commonly believed, but I think that's less than settled. But he's trying to take over. He's trying to maintain the situation as it will, and or as he wants it to stay, because he's now in control of the situation. And overall, this is sort of like the situation we're just talking about. They're trying to create a new world, but knowing that it's in opposition to the just world. And it's kind of an act of fear to try to maintain the world from his perspective, right? So he's doing all these things that he's just trying to maintain his power, but they're obviously making things worse. And until people like Robin Hood intervene in the situation and try to reconstitute what was been lost. So where does this leave us? I mean, this all kind of sets up this idea. So today's idea is really, here, let me follow along so I don't lose everybody here. Today's idea is really another form of the preceding one, except it is more specific as to the emotion aroused. Actually, a meaningless world is impossible. So what they mean by this is it's impossible because if you give it meaning, we are powerful and creative consciousness. So there's nothing, they say in the book that there is no thought that is without active creation on some level. So mind creates constantly, and to believe that it can't, or believe that it doesn't, is going to create more confusion because it can. Recognition of meaninglessness arouses deep anxiety in all the separated ones. So part of this resonates with them. It presents a situation in which God and the ego challenge one another. So that's just what we were talking about. The one that's looking into the world as though it can be separate is seen as a challenge to the will of the other. Each other has who meaning is as written in empty space and meaninglessness provides. Empty space being like the cave. The ego rushes in frantically to establish its own ideas here, fearful that the void may otherwise be used to demonstrate its own impotence and unreality. And on this alone, it is correct. It is essential, therefore, that you learn to recognize the meaningless and accept it without fear. If you are fearful, it is certain that you will endow the world with the attributes that it does not possess, because it is not a fearful world. So we're trying to align ourselves. Sorry, just to stop here. We're trying to align ourselves with that state of which we were from, and which is without fear. So if we have fear, and it can be brought in by this, like they say, but just know that that's contrary to your nature. So it's going to make you kind of fall into that sort of void of reaffirming itself by thinking it's meaningless. So reaffirming its reality when it really isn't real at all. And if we see it as just a dream that is quietly escaped and peacefully escaped, then it can kind of be a smooth transition. And crowd it with images that do not exist. To the ego, illusions are safety devices, as they must also be to you who equate yourself with the ego. With eyes closed, repeat today's idea to yourself. A meaningless world engenders fear. Then open your eyes and look about slowly, saying, I am looking at a meaningless world. Repeat the statement to yourself as you look about. Then close your eyes and conclude with, a meaningless world engenders fears because I think I am in competition with God. So this all makes sense, but keep in mind you have to do this eye closed part, so you're kind of framing a moment in your own consciousness. You may find it difficult to avoid resistance in one form or another to this concluding statement. Whatever such a resistance may take, remind yourself that you are really afraid of such a thought because of the vengeance and the enemy. You are not expected to believe the statement at this point. You will probably dismiss it as preposterous, and this is fine. Yeah, they're saying, this is probably the case. But you're not asked to judge it at this moment, and that's what I would kind of fall on right now. Know carefully, however, any signs of overt or covert fear that may arouse. This is your first attempt in stating an explicit case for the effect relationship of a kind which you are very inexperienced in recognizing. Do not dwell on the concluding statement, and do not even try to think of it except during the practice periods. That will be sufficient at present. So this whole process, basically this, just 3 or 4 times today for about a minute or so. So pretty light still. But this one is really the one that is the most powerful, I believe, so far in the change that it can engender, because there's a lot of things that can come from this one. The other ones are just kind of getting used to the idea. This is really something that can be um, healing to people, I would say. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.